James was very bored. He tried calling each one of his friends, but it's like all of them vanished. He then tried playing some video games and watching his favorite show, but he was bored of that too. So he thought about looking at the rest of phone numbers in his contact list. Then he had an idea. What if he tried to call the devil's number? The number is 666. Some time ago, he talked about that with his friends. Some thought it was just silly, while others were actually afraid of calling, so they never did. James had no idea about what would happen and didn't even think about what to do if someone responded. He was convinced he would just hear an error message. So he armed himself with bravery and dialed the unholy number. He started to feel nervous, but also thrilled by the experience, even though nothing had happened yet. But then, everything went south. The phone started to emit a long and loud beep and did that for a long while. James was about to lose his patience and hang up, but then he heard groans. It sounded like the voice of a woman yelling for help, and her screams reflected pure agony. With his heart racing, James tried to listen more attentively. The groans lasted for a few seconds. Then could be heard the constant beep from before, and then a strange sigh could be heard. James instinctively hung up after hearing that. What did he hear? He was very confused. And just a few moments later, he started to think that maybe he hung up on someone who needed help. He had to call again. However, he did not want to use his mobile phone, so he grabbed his keys, got out of the house, and headed to the public phone around the corner. Almost nobody used them anymore, but it still worked. James took out a couple of coins, put them in, and dialed the number. This time around, the beep was shorter. He then heard the groans again, and then the same voice asking who was calling. James responded by asking, "Why are you screaming?" The woman responded, "Because it hurts so much." And even though he tried to keep talking to her, he could only hear groans and screams. Then, a few seconds later, the line went dead. He hanged up the phone, and after walking around the neighborhood for a bit trying to calm down, he finally went back home. James was terrified, and he suddenly felt a pressure in his chest that made him almost unable to breathe. Once home, he tried to open the front door, but he couldn't. For some reason, his key wasn't working, and he tried so many times that he ended up breaking it. It was so cold outside that he was about to freeze, so he had no choice but to break the kitchen's window with a big rock to be able to get in. James then took a hot shower and went to bed, but woke up in the middle of the night covered in sweat. His phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Who was calling him so late at night? Still half asleep, he grabbed the phone and answered the call. All he could hear was a strange breathing, and suddenly a voice started to count down from the number 666. James was completely hypnotized by that terrifying countdown. So much so that at number 10, heavy knocks on his door woke him from his trance. It was just his neighbor who had an emergency and needed money. That could have been just a coincidence, but who knows what really happens once the countdown reaches 0. Hey there, TikTakers! A few years ago, calling the devil's number became a fad, and many fell for the mass hysteria surrounding this challenge. The fear was real. However, it was demonstrated that in most cases, the terrifying calls were just pranks organized with friends. For instance, some people would rename one of their phone contacts as 666. So when they filmed themselves, the number 666 would appear on the screen, but they were actually just calling a friend with whom they agreed on what to do beforehand. In other cases, the calls would just give out an error message due to the number being invalid, or would redirect to the call center of some company. It is clear that it's difficult to demonstrate that every single one of those videos were fake, but surely most of them were. That said, we recommend that you never try calling the devil's number. Who knows? The challenge could end up being true, and your soul could be in grave danger. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!